Today we're going to be thinking about the first few verses of chapter 2 in the book of Philippians. But before we go on to those verses, I want us to think about the last couple of verses of chapter 1, just really briefly to pick up on something from there. In verse 27 of chapter 1, Paul says, "Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ." And he goes on to say to the Christians, remember that you are united in one spirit, that we are together under the lordship of one Christ, that we are united because of what Christ has done for us. This isn't just about something that's individualistic, but is about us as a community together. Then as we begin chapter 2, he says, if you've got any encouragement from this, remembering that we are united, then there's a way in which we should live. There is an attitude which should underpin how we choose to live our lives. And that attitude is one of humility, of humbling ourselves, of saying that we are willing to serve others, to serve Christ, to choose to put him first. Last week, Josh was reminding us that actually when Paul was sitting in prison, he could have been really focused on himself, focused on how difficult things were for him. But he was drawn to the fact that this is about the story of Christ, and we get to be part of that. He puts Christ first. And as he goes on to write about our attitude, how our attitude should be one of humility, he actually points us to Jesus. He gives the example of how Jesus lives his life as a way to help us understand what this might mean for us. He says that Jesus, even though he is fully God and has all the rights to act in such a way, has all the right to hold on to that authority and power, Jesus chose to humble himself. Jesus chose to become like us, to take on human flesh. And even more than that, he was willing to go to the cross to die. Now, I think sometimes we've become kind of blasé with the whole idea of the cross. We don't fully understand how big a deal this was. During the Roman Empire, dying on a cross was seen as such a horrific thing to happen, such a horrible thing to take place, that Roman citizens weren't allowed to be killed in that way. If you were a citizen of Rome, you were deemed to be too good to be killed in that way. In other words, they said that if you were less than a Roman citizen, then you could be killed on the cross. So imagine Paul then saying to a bunch of people who many of them would have been Roman citizens, actually, you need to humble yourself like Jesus, who obediently went to the cross. He allowed himself to be taken to the cross and to die in that horrific, lowly way. Do you know, we look around and we see people maybe wearing a cross on their necks. Maybe people have crosses up in their homes. We've got them around our city, in churches, all sorts of different places that we see the symbol of the cross. Yet can you imagine being in the middle of Philippi, surrounded by Roman citizens who would just think, do you know what, this is the worst way that anybody could ever be killed. They wouldn't have been willing to even wear a cross around their neck. Never mind to consider what it might have meant to put themselves so lowly that they would die in that way. Yet Paul is reminding them that Jesus, the Son of God, was willing to do that so that we could be in relationship with God himself. Now, if that doesn't stir you to think about your attitude today, I don't know what will, but I know that I've been really challenged thinking about the level of humility that God himself in Jesus takes on